Can we see the presentation? I hope it's clear. Okay.
I see the presentation, yes.
All right. So, good evening, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. How are you all? I hope you're enjoying your weekend. Um, so, today is module 4, and we're going to be talking about rule of law and accountability. And I'm hoping that we'll be able to have more time for discussions. That's why we're going to start very early, and I'm going to try and stick to time because the scope of this particular topic is so wide. But we're just going to touch on the key issues for today. And then maybe subsequently we can pick it out one by one. So you're all welcome. Once again, my name is Bolanle Olafunmiloye, and I'll be taking you for today's module. So first things first is we're going to go to our outline. Don't be scared with all the outlines. We're just going to touch on these things just in bits. The first one is we're going to be looking at, of course, the introduction, why are we here and what are our learning outcomes. Then we're going to be looking at what is the rule of law and the importance of rule of law. We're also going to look at legal and institutional frameworks that guide the rule of law. And then we're going to also be looking at notable pronouncements by the Supreme Court on the rule of law. After that, we're going to now go into accountability. What is accountability? Types of accountability, importance of accountability. And once we've looked at that in details, we're now going to look at the linkage between the rule of law and accountability. Number 10 on our outline will be a big question, which we're going to all discuss. Are our leaders accountable? And then after that, we're going to look at challenges faced. Are they accountable? Are they not accountable? What are the challenges they face or we face as a people in terms of rule of law and accountability? Then this 12th thing on our outline is we're going to go into breakout sessions, and we're going to look at some case studies. I hope Mr. Mentor Albert is going to join us because he's going to help us handle these breakout sessions. We'll be talking more about that when we get there. Then 13 is how can we protect the rule of law in our own individual ways in the society. And then the citizens' role in promoting accountability of leaders, institutions, and things like that. And then we'll conclude just to wrap up what we have done for today. And then we go into our discussions and tasks. I have a few references that I'll also be giving the class. So thank you so much. And let's go straight into the core aspects of the presentation. Now, the first thing we're going to be looking at is an overview. Basically, we're going to, like I said, explore rule of law and accountability. That's why we're here. We're going to be looking at the definitions, importance, legal frameworks and institutions, and then our role as citizens to promote rule of law and accountability. And at the end of this session or this module, we're supposed to understand the importance of the rule of law in a functional society. And let's hope we come to the conclusion that Nigeria is a functional society. Then we're going to recognize the roles of citizens in ensuring accountability of government officials and institutions. And at the end of the day, we're going to be able to discuss the relationship between the legal system and civic responsibility in our everyday life. So thank you. Next thing is, what is the rule of law? During my research, I found out that there are different definitions of the rule of law, different ones, depending on the angle you're looking at it. But just to summarize everything into a simple phrase, the rule of law can be defined as the principle that all individuals and institutions are subject to and accountable under the law. And I put here in bold, no one is above the law. That is what the rule of law entails. That is the main fundamental issue concerning the rule of law. No one is above the law. Everybody is subject to the law and accountable under the law. That's the principle of rule of law. And this principle actually has subsets, elements. The first one is saying that the law is supreme. Like I said, no one is above the law is supreme. It's not about morality or ethnicity or spirituality. It's not about, tribalism, or even about who is more godly or holy, or who is the best person. It is basically saying that no matter what issues you're looking at, the law as it is at that particular time is what is supreme. And we're going to be looking at which of these laws is regarded as supreme. So the concept of rule of law is very germane in respect of the supremacy of the law. And we will look at why. Now, another principle or an element under the principle of rule of law is that that of equality before the law, meaning everybody is equal before the law, whether you're rich or poor, whether you're educated or illiterate, whether you're a man or a woman, whether you are an MD or a cleaner, everybody must be subject to the law. That is what equality is. It's not going to be biased. It's not going to be swayed by other considerations. The fact that you're a citizen of a country, you're subject to the law and you're equal before the law. And then the third aspect of the principle of rule of law is the protection of individual rights. What it means is that once, we talked about citizens' rights and duties in the Module 2, and basically saying that once you are a citizen of the country, even if you're not a citizen, there must be some rights that you're entitled to. But for citizens, we're going to be looking at the individual rights, the fundamental human rights that citizens are going to be protected under the rule of law. So those are key elements of the principle of rule of law. Now, why is the rule of law important? We talked about the definition, no one is above the law. We talked about the fact that there are certain principles. The law must be supreme. Everybody must be equal. And it must protect our individual rights. Why? So the essence, which is very important, is that the rule of law promotes stability. Stability, let me make it broad. Stability, even in the home, in our communities, in our local governments, in the state government, in the federal government, as a country as a whole. Once the rule of law is adhered to, the principles are followed, then there will be stability across board. And we're going to be looking at key issues that affect that stability. Secondly, the rule of law is important because it ensures justice. Like I said, everybody's equal. It's not about morality or spirituality, or it's not subjective. It is objective, and it will ensure that justice is actually delivered and served to anybody that needs it. We're going to be looking at how the rule of law is connected to our legal system and, of course, the judiciary, and why it's very important for the judiciary to uphold the rule of law. So one of the importance is ensures justice. Now, it also protects the individual rights, I mentioned that, and fundamental rights of human beings. So we talked about certain fundamental rights, right to life, right to fair hearing, right not to be discriminated upon, right not to, right to dignity of your person, right of course, right to freedom of expression, freedom of association. All these rights are actually protected under the principle of rule of law. And that's why it's very important for us to understand that the rule of law must actually be protected in our society. Then it fosters peace and security. I'm linking this to the next step, which says it promotes orderliness and removes chaos, conflict, and internal crisis. Now, looking at Nigeria as a country, we know that there are certain areas that we have serious conflict. Um, in the, of course, in the Northeast, we have the fundamentalists, Boko Haram, that feel that Westernization is a problem, and they want to stop Westernization of people and education of their children, of their cities, of their people within the community. Of course, the way they are going about it has caused chaos and conflict, kidnapped girls and all those things. And then, of course, we have the others farmers clashes in the central part of Nigeria. We have the what they call it in the southeast. We have the issue of Nnamdi Kanu and IPOB, and the issue of Biafra, where people feel that they're not being taken care of within the Nigerian structure, and they want to go out and things like that. And of course, in the Southwest, we have the issue of kidnapping and robbery and ritual killings and all that. So the question is there a lack of implementation, or are we not adhering to the rule of law that is bringing out all this chaos and conflicts all over? Should we look at and look at Nigeria critically and see whether we are actually applying the rule of law the way we should be doing? So we have to look at that too. And then we will now understand that if we are applying the rule of law the way we're supposed to be doing, it should promote peace and security rather than the chaos and conflict that is going on. Another importance of rule of law is that it enhances public confidence. Of course, imagine when someone feels that if a crime is committed against the person knows that he can go to the court or report the matter to the police, and then the matter will be taken up, or you go to court and then you get redress in court, or they feel that if they challenge any, public servant, politician, or civil servant, they feel that it will be adequately treated and if acted upon, basically, if each person feels that even their rights as human beings will be protected, then there will be public confidence in the structure or in the country of Nigeria. And of course, once there's public confidence, it follows that there will be investment. It follows that we will reduce this Japa syndrome that people have thought that, oh, they're just fed up of Nigeria and they want to go to other countries where they actually adhere to their own rule of law. So we need a situation where people believe that the rule of law is being adhered to, is being protected, and because of that, even foreign investors will come in. People will say, oh, this country, they follow the rule of law, they understand the principles, and if there's any problem, it will be adequately handled and all that. They will bring their funds in. So it not only does it enhance public confidence, it also encourages investment, local investments within the country, and even foreign investments from outside to come in. And of course, imagine when all that comes in, it all cumulates to promoting economic growth. Standard of living will be improved, inflation will be reduced. There's so many things that would affect the adherence to the rule of law once it is properly done. The reason why we're saying this is that there are some countries that we use as examples where they follow the rule of law in their own countries, and we see the effects of the adherence to that rule of law. So we're comparing and seeing that truly a country that has proper and protects the rule of law actually has positive sides. And at the end of the day, the citizens live in a good environment and can strive for whatever they want to achieve. Now, I'm going to stop talking right now and ask us to go through our memory or a check. I want us to talk about whether there are other importance, other things that we feel the rule of law helps us, guide. So I want to us to put in our chat box now, and examples of why the rule of law is important in our country. So I've talked about, of course, I want you to talk outside what I've already listed. Promotes stability, ensures justice, protects rights, fosters peace, enhances public confidence, encourages investment, and promotes economic growth. So if you can just put up on the chat box and state just one thing you feel the rule of law promotes or encourages in the country and why it's important. Okay, so can we do that, please? Let me see. I've opened the chat box just to make sure that you guys are following me. Hello, can you hear me? So that I'm not the only one talking. It's going to be very interactive and participatory. So please, you have to mention at least one that you feel it's outside the list that I have mentioned. Thank you, Ekara. Ekara Sunday says that it enhances harmony and peaceful coexistence. Yes. Oh, Abimbola Grillo says checks and balances and for sanity. That mental health. It improves mental health because there's sanity. I hope that's what you're trying to say. Thank you. Mr. Kayode Oseni says rule of law can promote justice. Yes, we've mentioned that already on our slide. So let's see any other. Dr. Jubri Lawal, how are you? You say it encourages freedom of speech and makes citizens understand their rights, stops where others start. Yes. So once you know your rights, you know the limitations also within the law. Dr. Abubakar Khalid says enhances stability and trust. Yes, stability again. Antonia Falashade Lawa says it promotes equality. Yes, we talked about equality. Everybody feels they are being treated the same. Olusanjo Fagongwe says rule of law promotes equality in the society as well. Thank you. Then Iman Tahir says prevents abuse of power. Thank you. Because if you abuse power, the rule of law will apply. Brickska says rule of law promotes trust in our legal system. Yes, very important. Our legal system, because right now, the way they are trashing our judiciary and legal system is very worrisome. As a lawyer, I think it's very worrisome. Thank you, Briska. Otupate, sorry if I hope I got that. Otupate Adebisi Richard says it protects minority rights. Yes, because it also ensures that they are equal before the law, even where their own opinions or situations are minority. Dr. Abubakar is here again, says encourages social contract. Yes, talked about social cohesion and social contract. Pabongwe also says, again, rule of law enhances democracy and good governance. Yes, thank you very much. And yes, Richard says supports democracy. Kayode Oseni says rule of law can eradicate all for I don't get that. All for S of rascality. I don't know what that means. Can you expatiate, Mr. Oseni? Mr. Kayode Oseni, rule of law can eradicate all for S, all forms of rascality. Yes, thank you. All forms of rascality and abuse of power is very similar to that. So thank you so much. I'm happy that we're all on the same page. And because of that, we're going to go to the next thing. Otukwate says fosters economic growth. Yes, I said that. Thank you so much. So the next thing on is we're going to be looking at, oops, sorry, this thing is going faster than. So we're going to be looking at the legal and institutional framework. Of course, we want to understand what the concept of rule of law and see whether it's just vague, or abstract, but it's actually based on legal and institutional framework. And the first thing we're going to be looking at is the fact that our constitution, of course, the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, is what we call the ground norm. It is the fundamental law. Nigeria is number one at the peak of all the laws that we ever have in Nigeria. And that is why the Constitution is very important to us. And like I said last week, I would advise that we all have a pocketbook of the Constitution. It's really not as bulky or as before. Now we have some very nice pocket books that they designed it in. And of course, we have the online version. So download the Constitution onto your phone or buy the pocket book, whatever you do, just get a copy of the Constitution. You might not need it every day, but once in a while, issues might come up and you might have to look at it. Interpretation of the Constitution is another thing. That one is done by the courts, but at least you have an idea of what it says. So our Constitution is the fundamental tool of the rule of law in Nigeria. Let me put it that way. And it's important for us to understand that. And that's why some people say, is the Constitution as it is today, does it reflect what Nigeria intended to, or our founding fathers? Is this what they intended Nigeria to be like? Some say, oh, we need to restructure the entire system and not just amend the Constitution, but redesign a new Constitution that fits to the purpose. Some say, no, the Constitution as it is actually very efficient. It is only for us as citizens of Nigeria to be determined to ensure that the Constitution and the provisions of the Constitution is protected. So there are two different thoughts, but as of today, the Constitution is the supreme law of the land. It is the supreme and what we call the ground norm of the land. So it's very, very important we understand that. Now, the rule of law is also protected in the, like I said, the Constitution is our fundamental law. And within the Constitution, to ensure that some people mentioned abuse of power, rascality, and what checks and balances, the rule of law has to be protected. And that is why the Constitution has checks and balances inside. And the Constitution has divided the key institutions in the country into three. I'm sure we've heard this before. We have the executive, which is headed by the president, and this is where you have presidents, the vice president, governors of states, deputy governors, and all that. And they are the ones that are meant to implement the laws and policies, rules and regulations of the country. Then you now have the legislature, which is meant to handle, their oversight function is one, to enact laws on behalf of the people of the country. So we have the legislature is made up of course, Senate and the House of Representatives, which is combined to be called the National Assembly. And then you have the state houses of assembly. And the idea is that they look at how the law is being implemented. They look at enacting new laws where they feel there are gaps, and they look at how they should amend the laws if they are not fulfilling the purpose of which they were enacted in the first place. So they have an oversight function in ensuring that laws are put in place. Of course, whenever they do this, they will consult the Constitution, because any law they enact that is against, or that is against the Constitution or the provisions of the Constitution is supreme, and those laws will be held to be invalid or illegal. Then we have the third institution, which is the judiciary. Now, when you're talking about the rule of law, you're actually talking about the legal system and the judiciary. The judiciary is headed by the Chief Justice of Nigeria, and their own role is to ensure that justice is served at all times, for all people, equally across the country. And they look at interpreting the laws, also ensuring that they check, they act as I always say it's just in Nigeria that the judiciary is actually one of the strongest institutions we have. But we need to ensure that we strengthen it and we protect it. And, we have to do it. A lot of work to ensure that they are the ones that promote concept of rule of law is actually adhered to. Okay, so we're going to be looking at how the judiciary does that. Now, apart from this key institutions that are provided in the Constitution, there are so many other rule of law, but like I said, but we're going to limit it to looking at our civic awareness and all that, and link it to accountability. So, but some of the things I needed to point out, the anti-corruption agencies. The anti-corruption is the rule of law and ensure that the rule of FCC, Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, we have the ICPC, Independent Commission. What's ICPC again? we have the ICPC, and then we have the Code of Conduct Bureau, which is also very strong for public officers. So, it's important for us to know that these institutions, and there are more. So can we also talk about other anti-corruption agencies? I was trying to get it, John. Please. Independent Corrupt Practices and Other Related Offences Commission. That is what ICPC is, always Other Related Offences Commission. So do we know of any other anti-corruption agencies that help us protect the rule of law in Nigeria? Can you just put up on the chat? Because I've mentioned the popular ones. You have EFCC, you have ICPC, you have Code of Conduct. Is there any other one? Do you think there's any other one that is available? Anti-corruption. Although now, even of course, that the police is also a part of the security agencies that look at crimes and all that. Of course, we have the DSS is on security, and they look at the things that are done in the national interest. We have the Public Complaints Commission. Thank you, Ms. Dr. Lawal. You have the Public Complaints Commission, as stated by Dr. Lawal. Do we have any other one? I mentioned police, I mentioned DSS. I know there are, of course, yes, police force. So NSDCDC, that is civil defense, right? Do civil defense handle anti-corruption matters? Yes, we have various states that established anti-corruption agencies, yes. And in fact, I'm speaking for Ondo State, and I know that we have one. We also have yes, the Code of Conduct Bureau, yes, I've mentioned that, and the tribunal attached to it, yes. Thank you so much. So we have an idea of what we're talking about. So I was talking about the judiciary and the role they play, and I thought it was important to bring out some notable pronouncements of the Supreme Court on the rule of law, because while I was doing the research, I thought it was important to share some of this information. So the first one, okay, can whistleblowers be considered here? Yes, and we're going to definitely talk about whistleblowing as we're going to be mentioning it, and you will see why it's very important. FCCPC, yes. So let's go to the notable, wait 1 minute. Aha, notable pronouncement by the Supreme Court, please. So Caribbean White JSC, that's Justice of the Supreme Court, as it then was, stated in a case, Aigba and Okogwe, as far back as 1991. And he said, the principles of rule of law are stated by Dicey. Dicey was an English, what do you call it? Legal jurist, yes. The principles of the rule of law as stated by Dicey are, 1, A, the absolute supremacy of law, as opposed to the exercise of arbitrary power. Then B, equality of all persons before the law. And C, that the Constitution is the result of the ordinary law of the land as interpreted by the courts. So to show you the fact that supremacy of the law is important, equality of the people before the law is important, and the Constitution as an element of rule of law is important. This was as far back as 1991. Now, in Omiyale and Macaulay, 2009, Ogbuagu JSC said the law is no respecter of persons, and the rule of law is supreme and must be upheld. In the military governor of Lagos State and Ojukwu in 1986, and this is like a locus classicus for this particular subject, had Obaseki JSC said, the judiciary cannot shirk its sacred responsibility to the nation to maintain the rule of law. It is both in the interest of government and all persons in Nigeria. The law should be even-handed between government and the citizens. I love this quote to show that, look, it's in our interest to have rule of law. It's in our interest not to allow some people to usurp the powers that have been given under the rule of law. And the judiciary is critical in ensuring that the rule of law is maintained in the country. Question is, have they been able to succeed? All these things we're going to ask ourselves and answer later. Now, there's another one, also from military government.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
And Ojukwu.
It's not so with dancing.
Sorry, Madam Antonia, can you put your, can you mute your, thank you. So the next, no problem. The next one, notable pronouncements on the rule of law, also by Obaseki, was that the Nigerian Constitution is founded on the rule of law. The primary meaning of which is that everything must be done according to law. Not, like I said, ethnicity or religion or tribalism or anything. Everything must be done according to law. It means also that government should be conducted within the framework of recognized rules and principles, which restrict discretionary powers, as opposed to the uncertain and crooked cord of discretion. And we're going to be looking at some of these things. We're looking at whether these issues are coming up in today's Nigerian situation. Rule of law means that disputes as to the legality of acts of government are to be decided by judges who are independent of the executive. This was as far back as 1986. Question is this what is happening today to 2025? Because our judges, our justices had predicted that we must defend and maintain the rule of law to avoid abuse of power, unnecessary discretion that can cause chaos in the society. That is basically. So I saw these quotes and I thought it was important to share during my research. I hope you understand that. And with that, we're going to now move to the next part, which is accountability. So we've gone through just the rule of law as briefly as I can. Like I said, it's so interesting and very wide in scope. But for this purpose of this presentation, we just looked at it a bit. Now, the next one is accountability. What is, sorry? What is accountability? All right, so just like the system now, you have so many definitions of accountability. Everybody feels there are things that they feel should be important when you're talking about accountability. But I brought out some and I referred to the websites I got that. So for the ones that struck me, we have an obligation or willingness to accept responsibility or to account for one's action. Another one says to take ownership of what happens as a result of your choices and actions. You don't blame others or make excuses, and you do what you can to make amends when things go wrong. I love that aspect. You do what you can to make amends when things go wrong. To become more accountable, make sure that you're clear about your roles and responsibilities. Another definition says, acknowledging and fixing your mistakes. In fact, I should have put the fixing also in bold. Acknowledging and fixing your mistakes. It's easy to pass the blame on someone else, but accountability means accepting responsibilities for your errors and taking the appropriate actions. Mistakes are a necessary part of the learning process. So what I brought out here is that one, it's an obligation to accept responsibility when you are in a certain position. And then when decisions are taken by you or you act in a certain way, you take ownership of what you have done, the choices and actions you have made. And then I love this one. You don't blame others. Oh my goodness. I remember when, and it's very popular in Nigeria, when one government goes and another government comes, the other government will blame the previous government of all the woes that have come to Nigeria, and even though that they've acted on it and all that. No, that is not what accountability is. You take ownership of what you have done. The reason you're taking ownership, and then a lot of people feel that accountability is just, oh, you're accountable to us. No, not that you're just accountable to us. It actually goes beyond accepting the responsibility. That's the first definition. No, it goes beyond that. it also says that when you learn that you have taken an action and you've made a mistake, you go ahead to correct that mistake. You fix your mistakes. That's the part I like. Not only are you accepting responsibility. Some people say, I've accepted responsibility. I remember, let me just say that. I remember this when the former head of state came out with his book and he says, oh, I've accepted responsibility for the duty of no. And a lot of people went and said, no, you can't just accept responsibility. There were consequences to your actions. The question is, when you made the mistake, what have you done to correct those mistakes? So accountability is not just accepting responsibility. You must find ways to fix your mistakes and make a way of taking appropriate actions to ensure that the consequences of your actions are not, should I say, forever or endless or limitless, So it's not just about accepting responsibility. You must definitely take steps to ensure that those mistakes that you've accepted you are responsible for are not repeated. And then steps to make sure that, you correct them. And the beauty is, if you do not correct them, if you only accept responsibility and tomorrow you do the same thing, there's no consequence, is there? So accountability is where you have consequences of an action or a decision that was made. So one, there's an obligation to accept responsibility. Two, there's an obligation to correct the mistake that you have made. And three, there is a consequence to the action or the decision that you have made, meaning that you can be removed, you can be queried, you can be petitioned, there are consequences to the action. And for me, that is what makes accountability. I hope that is clear. So because, like I said, a lot of people just stop at, oh, just accept responsibility. No, you must face the consequences of your action. That is when you are accountable. Now, there are three different types of accountability, really. The first one is called vertical accountability. Now, this is described as where citizens hold their leaders accountable. So this, like a relationship, is vertical, it's like a relationship between the leaders and the citizens. Okay, that's vertical accountability. Now, horizontal accountability is where you have different institutions that hold each other accountable. Of course, we talked about the anti-corruption agencies. The anti-corruption agencies are also looking at the ministries and agencies that are the MDAs, ministries, departments, and agencies, and they are trying to ensure that they follow the rule of law. They must, their procurement must be done properly, over awarding of contracts and things like, those are the kind of things they come. Before you hear it, one accountant was arrested here. Another director was arrested here. So these are institutions holding each other accountable. This kind of accountability is called horizontal accountability. They are all institutions of government, but they hold themselves accountable. They have checks and balances there. And then you have the diagonal accountability. Now, this is where we have our civil society organizations, and I have to really, really applaud them. Some are doing well. I understand the frustrations that can come or that can come in respect of holding government accountable or trying to ensure that people have civic education to know their rights, like our ALG is doing, and Solag. These are oversight role by civil society organizations and media practitioners. It's called diagonal accountability. Now, the question is, how do they, and I put methods of how they ensure accountability. For vertical accountability, where the citizens are holding their own leaders accountable, how can they hold them accountable? They send petitions. Of course, they notify them, you are doing this right, you are not doing this right. This road has not been graded. Meanwhile, the contract has been awarded, things like that. And then, of course, the almighty elections. Our people must know their power. This one is not a right to vote is there, but the power of voting is very powerful. If only we knew how to enforce that power of getting rid of leaders we feel are not performing well. So, well, that is one of the methods we can do. And then, of course, even though we have elected them, we can remove leaders. You can remove leaders even though you've elected them. And this is the recalling process. We know some people wanted to recall one of our female leaders recently, but of course, the way they went about it was too much. And thank God INEC threw it out. But these are methods that accountability can be enforced by citizens. Then, of course, we have the institutions, the horizontal accountability, like I mentioned. Already, we talked about how the judiciary can, sit on, hear matters concerning government. Even we have state government to federal government, local government suing federal government, local government suing state government, So you have the checks and balances that have been provided by the Constitution. And of course, you have the internal checks and balances, of course. We have what you call due process. You have the BPE, and then each state has due process agencies or departments that they use. Those are internal checks and balances to ensure that the institutions within government are complying with what they're supposed to be doing. And of course, we have our anti-corruption laws that we talked about. The agencies are there, and all these agencies are backed by laws that were enacted by the legislature, whether at the federal or at the state level. So these are methods where horizontal accountability can check or can enforce their own accountability. Then diagonal accountability, of course, thank God for some of our CSOs, and we're going to be talking about them. Social mobilization is a method of enforcing their accountability, diagonal accountability, meaning that how can they do it? They might not be able to say, oh, they are voting or whatever, although they do vote, but most of the time they can't wait for the end of 4 years before they wage war against leaders that are not doing well. So social mobilization for protests, rallies, and when they say online petition, sign this petition and things like that, or engagement, those are things that civil society organizations can do. And of course, the media, investigative journalism. I'm happy that some media practitioners are focused on that. Of course, we know Udemy and things like that. And of course, other investigative journalists that expose bad leadership within our system. And of course, editorials, every day, every week, we have editors of newspapers or social media platforms coming up with editorials criticizing aspects of government. So these are the different types of accountability and methods that we can ensure accountabilities of our leaders. Next is, why is accountability very important? Why? What makes it important? And I've identified 4. Of course, we know that once people know, leaders know that they are being they are being watched, not just by the people, but also the institutions or the civil society or the media. They they try to, well, they are supposed to, whether they do, they are supposed to curb themselves and ensure they work within the powers that have been given to them. They don't abuse power. They don't, the corruption level is eliminated, but in this case, let's say reduced, I don't know if we can completely eliminate corruption, but it prevents a certain level of corruption. And then, of course, we have accountability is also important because it promotes good governance. Like I said, some leaders have conscience and they want to, make good impact to the people they lead. And so they will try as much as possible to give back to the society and promote good governance. Now, it ensures effective use of resources. Still the same thing. When you are able to budget and plan and implement certain policies and, you get the end results of maybe you have a certain limited funding, but you show that the funding is used effectively to make the best impact as possible. So, and then of course, improves learning and growth. Now, this is the aspect of consequences of the action, because the idea of accountability is when a mistake has been made, a mistake in quotes, there are sometimes that is intentional, but once a mistake has been made, the next person knows, or that same person knows that, the consequence was too much. I have some examples, but I don't want to mention names, where I know there are some women that decided to go naked just to show their anger or to protest one of the policies of government. We also have situations where, women were in front of the National Assembly for so long protesting about how the men have sidetracked issues of the gender bills. When we were pushing for the 5 gender bills for the amendment of the Constitution, which we still have not fully gotten to today. But you see, when things like that happen, when there are consequences to the actions, when there's exposure of abuse of power, people will learn what not to do or how to do things better. And it's a learning process. So there's one of the definitions talked about the fact that you can make mistakes, really. If it's not intentional, you can make mistakes. And when you learn from your mistakes, it's a learning curve. And you improve every day. And when you improve every day, it means that there is room for growth. So it's also very important that we make sure that our leaders are accountable. Otherwise, we won't grow, we won't learn, we won't move forward. We need to ensure that we enforce principles of accountability across board, whether it's vertical, whether it's horizontal or diagonal. It's important. So next thing is, so I hope we understand the concept of accountability. We understand the concept of rule of law. We understand the importance of each of them. Now we're going to look at how they are linked, how they are related to each other, right? I just hope I'm within time. I hope yes, I have one now, so I have to round up soon. I hope we're following. Please, can someone say hello if we're
Hello,
still
yes,
following?
we
So
are.
that
We are following. Thank you.
okay,
Following.
great. So we need to understand that there is a linkage between the rule of law and accountability. Now, I've tried to depict it in this form. Okay, so we have the rule of law as the fundamental law of the land. Okay, now what we now have is accountability. But how are they related? How are they linked? Now, I have a short write-up, and I say the rule of law and accountability are closely intertwined They are closely intertwined concepts that are essential for good governance and ensuring justice in the society. Now, the rule of law establishes a framework of laws. And if you can see, while it is linking to accountability, I put legal framework. It provides legal framework. It establishes a framework of laws, institutions, and procedures that govern a society. It ensures that everyone, including government officials, is subject to the law and that the law is applied equally and fairly. Now, accountability, which is at the bottom, strengthens the rule of law, and you can see the link going up. It strengthens the rule of law, right? By ensuring that those in power are answerable for their actions. This helps to prevent abuse of power, corruption, and arbitrary decision-making, which can undermine the rule of law. So you need to know the relationship and how they work together. So rule of law is different from accountability, but they both work hand in hand. And when they now work hand in hand, what do they bring out? They bring transparency. Transparency, they ensure that there's transparency in decision making. There's transparency in actions taken. There's transparency in budget preparing. There's transparency in implementation. So it ensures that once they know that they are accountable to the people, if the people are not satisfied with them, the rule of law is there. They can be punished, and there's consequences to their actions. Secondly, it ensures it's not just ensures institutional what do you call it? Institutional checks and balances. It helps to understand that it promotes it strengthens it, that each agency, each institution has to do its work, almost like a competition. They need to do his work. So you see FCC going up and down from one place to another, from one place to another, and you see Code of Conduct also trying to say, oh, I'm within my the provision, the powers given to me by the Constitution. ICPC is also saying, yes, me, I can also do it. Everybody is looking in to ensure that, in quotes, because these are debates that we have to agree on, to ensure that the rule of law and the leaders that are there are actually complying with the rule of law, and they are accountable to the people, and they are ready to wield the big stick if they are not accountable. So also about enforcement of laws, it ensures that we can enforce our laws, because when we see that people are not complying with these two, it's just to take them to court, arrest them, take them to court, charge them for the relevant offense, whether it's corruption offenses or whatever. Some people say corruption is stealing, whatever, abuse of power and things like that. The issue is we have enough laws on ground. And what we talked about the rule of law is that everybody is equal. No one is above the law. So whatever laws that have been put in place to address these issues the crimes that are put in place, they must be accountable to. They must be punished for it. So when you combine the rule of law and accountability, you are able to enforce the laws more effectively, because you would have, of course, gotten all your facts, as this part is for lawyers and all. Then we have prevention of corruption. Of course, that is the end goal, because Nigeria seems to be swallowed up by this issue of corruption, and we need to get ourselves out of it, because some people believe that once we are able to tackle the issue of corruption, then Nigeria will be free to improve and move to the next level or even greater heights than what it is today. So that linkage of rule of law and accountability, very important. There are two different concepts, but they must work in hand in hand to be able to ensure that our democratic society, our democracy in Nigeria is protected. It is when we feel that the way things are going, people are not complying with the law, or people are not accountable, or there are no consequences for misbehavior and abuse of power. All these things affect the mindset of the people. And in West Africa now, we have some countries that are not practicing democracy. And the people are happy because they feel that their leaders were not accountable, or the rule of law was not adhered to and was rubbished. Because at will, they will change the constitution to favor themselves and for their best interest. So when there is no confidence in the rule of law or accountability, it is very critical to the stability of democracy. And we must consider that. I remember there was a time when some people were talking about military in Nigeria, and we're like, let's try and find our way back to adhering to the rule of law. So these issues are critical to ensuring that democracy is sustained in our society. So I hope that is clear. We move to, yes, which is where I move to. Our main question: are our leaders accountable? In your own opinion, we should hold on. In your own opinion, looking at accountability, looking at rule of law, looking at the linkage between the two, can we say our leaders are accountable? Now, I just want each person to drop something, and very brief. I want, there's a yes or no answer, and then there's also a maybe answer. So yes, our leaders are accountable because there's evidence to show that they are following the rule of law and all that. No, our leaders are not accountable because there's evidence to show that they are doing somehow. And then there's the maybe, sometimes our leaders are accountable, sometimes our leaders are not accountable. I need each person to drop their own opinion. Okay, I know that Miss Antonia Falashade Lawala said, in my opinion, no, I know, but succinctly put, no, Mr. Kayode, no, I don't want a plain yes or no. Will you have your yes, and this is your reason, no, and this is your reason, maybe, sometimes, and this is your reason. So we'll do that in just 2 minutes. So each person should put, I don't want plenty stories or phrases, just one sentence. Yes, because this is major reason. I mean, I'm sure there are plenty reasons, but major reason for you why you feel the leaders are accountable, or why you feel they're not accountable, or why you feel that they are in between. So just one sentence. So can we go with it? Will you try again, Mrs. Lawa, I believe, Olashade Lawa, and then Mr. Kayode Oseni. So please rework your answer. Rewrite your answer. So we have 2 minutes for that, please. Is Mentor Albert here? Mentor Albert, have you joined us? How are you, sir?
I'm floating in and out because I have another event that
Oh, all right. Remember, we have the breakout session that you're going to help us.
You are the host, so you will need to make me co-host to do that.
I definitely will now.
You know how to do it?
Let me. So I was made the sole. I'm still waiting for your inputs. I'll read through everything. So I was made the sole host. I thought I was made a co-host.
No, you are so host. You're so host. Jumoke made you so host.
Okay, let me see. Okay, under participants, right? So, how am I going to move that now? I'm going to start reading our stuff here, but let me. Okay, so I have the
Just click on. You should have the breakout rooms there since you're host.
Yes, I do.
Uh,
But I don't know
all you need
our.
to do all you need to do is to say divide all participants into 3 or 4, whatever. You automatically create the groups.
Okay, all right. Okay, I'll look at that. All right, let me
Okay.
just go through some of our comments here. The comments are
All right.
coming
I'll
in.
be in the background, as I said, because I'm attending another event.
All right, no problem. Don't worry.
All right.
So
Well done.
just my eyes. Otupata Adebisi Richard says, accountability of leaders varies depending on factors like governing structures, institutions, and cultural norms. In some cases, leaders may be held accountable through elections. Leaders can be voted out of office if they fail to meet expectations, yes. Independent media, a free press can investigate and report, yes. Anti-corruption agencies, specialized agencies can investigate and prosecute. And then judiciary and independent judiciary can hold leaders accountable. However, accountability can be challenging when institutions are weak. Let me check more. This is a long response. Institutions are weak. Lack of effective check and balances can enable leaders to act with impunity. I agree. Corruption is widespread. Corruption can undermine accountability mechanisms, definitely. Lack of transparency, limited access to information can make it difficult to hold leaders accountable. Ultimately, accountability depends on a combination of strong institutions, active citizenry, and a culture of transparency. Thank you so much. That summarizes this aspect of the work, in fact. I just wanted us to include whether, in your opinion, you feel that our leaders, as we are currently, are actually accountable. So Ekare E. Sunday says, we cannot absolutely say that our leaders are not accountable. Thank you. Some are accountable, as we see in their works. They embark in their communities, while majority are not accountable at all. So majority are not accountable, but some are. Kyle Dale said, he says, no, because I have evidence of abuse of powers and privileges. Okay. Dr. Jubrin Lawa says, at some levels they are, but while at some levels they are not, because of the weakness of the law enforcement agencies and the process of investigation are poor. Okay, thank you so much. Do we have more? Yes. Briska Solomon says, our leaders lack accountability because they often act with impunity, unchecked by effective oversight or consequences of their actions. Imanta, he says, no, ma, they lack accountability due to corruption and bad governance. Antonia Folashade says, in my opinion, ma'am, most of the Nigerian leaders prioritize their personal interests instead of the interests of the citizens. Their poor leadership and lack of transparency comes to the fore, hence causing setbacks in the development of the country. So, while some claim to obey the rule of law, it's obvious that a majority of them aren't accountable. Nidala Mohammed Rabiu says only few are accountable because most of them are greedy and corrupt leaders. Asabe Adamu says accountability of leaders can vary significantly depending on the context, such as type. Okay, I think this is it the same person? Let's see. Such as the type of governance system in place, cultural norms and institutions that exist to hold leaders responsible for their actions. Democratic systems. In democracies, leaders are often held accountable through elections, check and balances, and transparent institutions. Regular elections provide a mechanism for the public to express dissatisfaction with their leaders, while independent judicial systems can hold leaders accountable for, I think that is conduct. Okay, thank you for all the comments. So I can see we have some maybes and some no's. I mean some yes, Abi. No, we say no, they lack. Are they accountable? No. Okay, so we have some no's and some maybes. Or sometimes. Okay, but what we have is that not all leaders are accountable all the time. I think that is what we have agreed from our little exercise. Some say outright no, they are not accountable. Some say it depends on the situation. All right, so I'm trying to move this. Oops. Okay, so now, which leads us to the next part of our presentation, which is looking at the challenges faced. I know that some of us mentioned it during our answers. The challenges faced. I have some here. We're going to mention more, hopefully. Now, from the answers given, some people brought out some of the challenges, why they feel that not all the time our leaders are accountable. Some say they are not accountable at all. So the first one I have here is weak institutions. And we mentioned the fact that institutions are weak, where they cannot carry out their responsibility as a check or balance to other institutions. I think at this stage, I'll say one of the weak institutions we have is even the National Assembly, because as if anything the president wants is what what they do, you know. Do they really act as a check or balance, a check to the executive? How about the judiciary as well? Do they really act as a check to the executive and the legislature? So that's even the constitutional institutions that we have been given. The question now is, how about the other institutions, the agencies we mentioned, anti-corruption agencies we mentioned? How independent are they? You know, how are they able to carry out their work? But especially when they have to rely on submitting their budgets to some of the people that they're supposed to be checkmating. So we have weak institutions, we have weak enforcement of the laws. I'm a lawyer, I've been a lawyer for over 20 years. And I say one thing, we have laws in Nigeria. We have laws. In fact, all we have to do is enforce these laws. And no, even as little as the traffic laws, to the waste disposal laws, you know, as little as those everyday social vices, not to talk of the anti-corruption laws. We have so many of them. And then, of course, the other criminal laws, like, you know, I'm very particular about domestic violence and rape cases. But here we're talking about civic engagement. So we're talking about anti-corruption laws, stealing, abuse of power. We have enough, using technology, we have enough laws. All we need to do is to create a system that can so effectively implement those laws. So weak enforcement of laws, very important. Then, of course, a very important discussion now, and it's on everybody's lips really, when they are talking about politics or the judiciary, political interference in the judiciary. Is it so is it so strong that it has prevented the judiciary from carrying out its role in ensuring that we adhere to the rule of law, because it is the judiciary's responsibility to ensure we adhere to the rule of law. So political interference in the judiciary, how has it affected our adherence to the rule of law? You know, so this is one of the challenges we face, because we see that sometimes this is so clear, and the NJC, National Judicial Council, is trying to, manage the situation. But I think that Nigerians need more confidence in them to ensure that the judiciary is independent and not interfered with by our politicians. Of course, another challenge is corruption and impunity. Those that are supposed to be checks to other people, they themselves will fall within the corruption and impunity level, because everybody is seeking one favor or the other. So those are the challenges that you face. Your child is looking for a job. The local government chairman that can get him a job is misbehaving, and we all know he's misbehaving, but because you want your child to get a job at the local government level, you can't say anything, So how can we ensure that we tackle this level of corruption that affects all of us? It's a major challenge we're facing. In fact, one of the greatest challenges we're facing. The lack of transparency in government. There was an issue recently, Abby, about I think the first one was the cost of solar power that also Villa wanted to is in the process of implementing. And then there was this issue of how many people went for a conference, and there's the issue of how much the executive want to spend on kitchen utensils, and there are issues of how much the Senate is, so how much you're spending on vehicles and thought. So lack of transparency in government, because all these things are shrouded in secrecy, and they just give us a broad picture while the details are kept until the last minute. So things like budgeting, public procurement, decision making, these are things that really we should have a system where things are done transparently, but a lot of things are still done in secret. Then selective justice. So we have a situation where people claim that, there's a law for the rich and there's a different rule of law for the poor, or there's a rule of law for the north and there's another rule of law for the south, So, but the issue is they don't have confidence in the judiciary, and they feel that there's selective justice being carried out. Then, of course, this also has to do with inequality before the law. So these are some of the challenges I have brought in. I'm happy that some of us discussed it while we were answering the last question. Let me see. So are there any other challenges? We have quite a number here. How did I do this? Okay, some people are still answering the previous question. Dr. Khalid said, no, Nigerian leaders are frequently criticized for a lack of accountability amid systemic corruption, including embezzlement and electoral fraud. Despite anti-graft bodies like EFCC, ICPC, etc., political interference and institutional inefficacy remain the major issues to the country's progress. Despite civil society advocates transparency, but restricts press freedom and persistent poverty, despite resource wealth fueling public suspicion. Okay. More so, reforms remain ineffective or often not implemented at all. Thank you for bringing out a lot of challenges. So if I can go through Dr. Khalid's response. You even talked about, I think, electoral fraud. I don't think I added that. What other electoral fraud and poverty are they challenges that affect rule of law and accountability for us? I see that in Dr. Khalid's response. Do you agree? What other challenges do we face in ensuring rule of law, protecting rule of law in Nigeria? We have quite a number. I know we talked about electoral system. Do we have anybody saying anything else? But I think I'll add electoral fraud, right? Electoral fraud is also affecting us. I agree. Because we can't, if we want to remove them.
Seriously, our leaders buy themselves into the offices. So you don't expect somebody who is having that ownership. He brought himself through buying the electorate into the position to be held accountable. And I think that justifies why electoral fraud is really one of the issues for accountability here.
I agree with you. Once they buy in, thank you so much, Dr. Khalid. Once they buy their way in, they feel they don't owe anybody. When you've collected your 5,000 naira, why would you come and ask him what he's doing and tell him to be accountable to you when you had bought his way? I remember there was a governor that said, I got him because of my money, not because of your votes. Boldly, he said that in public, you know. And so they feel that why should we bother if all we can do is save up money, and when it's election period, we buy our way into power, you know? So yes, I agree with you. And you link that with poverty, you know, because our people are quite, we can say some are poor, yes, but some are also greedy. But the poor ones are the poor ones, where they would even sell their votes for as low as 2,000 naira. So yes, electoral fraud and poverty is also an important factor that affects rule of law and accountability in Nigeria. Is there any other one? Thank you so much for that, Dr. Khalid. I like that angle, very critical. Is there anybody else? Otherwise, we move on. Because I think we have done over an hour and 30 minutes. Okay, so we have to go to the next. Okay, there's somebody here. Just want to make sure. I can't see the message. Is there any other message? Okay. Economic instability and poverty. Thank you, Asabe Adamu. Can exacerbate challenges to the rule of law, making it difficult for the government to invest in legal infrastructure and for the citizens to seek legal recourse. But what causes the economic instability? So I agree with you. I agree with you. So it's almost like a circle, you know, if government feels they don't have the finances to carry out certain infrastructural projects that will aid the adherence to the rule of law and accountability. Well, I don't know whether that can ever be the case. And then you now have poverty, of course. When corruption is flying up and down because people are really poor. Sometimes I see what goes on out there and I'm so sad. So thank you. We understand the challenges that we're facing, right? The question is, what can we do about it? Now, our next aspect is the breakout session. I've already taken a lot of your time. I'm going to do this breakout session. Let me just give you the ground rules. It's going to be very brief, please. I don't know how many participants are we? 17. Okay, that's okay. So I brought out 3 cases that I can think of that all of us should be aware of anyway, at one aspect or the other. And now we're going to look at the issues on, I'm going to break us into 3 groups, group 1, 2, and 3. Now we're going to look at the issues and challenges in this case, in each case, whichever group you are going to be, and then make recommendations on how you would have handled the matter differently, if you would have handled it differently. And if you agree with how it has been handled, you tell us how it has been handled from both perspectives. So from the government perspective and from the individual perspective. Group 1 is going to look at the removal of the Chief Justice of Nigeria, Honorable Justice Onege, GSC, and the clamp down on corrupt judges. If you remember, in 2018, you know, we had a clamp down on the judiciary, where we even had agencies barging into judges' quarters and all that. And it all cumulated to the removal of the CJN of Nigeria, of the Chief Justice of Nigeria. So group 1 is going to look at that. Group 2 is going to look at police brutality and the NSAS movement. We know what happened. We know how we started. We know how the movement became engulfed the whole country, and we know how it ended. So the question is, what issues, what challenges, and then did they follow, did they want accountability? Did they follow rule of law in ensuring accountability? Because in ensuring accountability, you might not follow rule of law. So does that give you the desired result you have? And then there might be rule of law without accountability. Does that give you the results that you want? Group 3 is going to be talking about the case of the former Central Bank of Nigeria governor, Godwin Emefiele. Of course, we know he's been arrested for a plethora of financial crimes. And of course, he feels that he was doing what he did in the best interest of the country. So we're going to look at how, these issues of rule of law, accountability, and then the challenges in the case that you feel, and then we're going to make brief recommendations on how you would have handled the matter differently, if at all. Now, each group will have just about, I think we're running out of time. We might have just less than 10 minutes, maybe about 8 minutes to go through these issues, just to bring out the bullet points. And then you're going to choose one person in your group that will give us just a summary of what you have agreed on in bullet points. So I don't want too much discussion. It's going to be, the issues are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The challenges we saw are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And these are the recommendations we would have made to government or would have made to the institution in charge of this matter. Do you understand? I hope that is clear. So breaking you into your 3 groups now. So group 1, please note what you're supposed to handle. Group 2, note your own case study. And then group 3, note your own case study. So I'm opening the rooms now. Okay. Hello, is this the group 3? You have to unmute yourself, please, so you can hear each other talk. You're supposed to handle the issue of the CBN governor. And like I said, issues, challenges, and recommendations. We're talking about rule of law and accountability. So you have to link it to each other. So, and you select one person to make the presentation. Your 8 minutes has started, though. In fact, you have used 3 or 4 minutes out of your 8 minutes. So feel free to unmute yourself and discuss while I go to the other breakout sessions, all right? So I'll be leaving now. So I hope you are discussing. No, I can't see anybody discussing. You should discuss. Unmute yourself and discuss. This is group 3, I believe.
Hello, good evening, everyone. Hello, good evening, everyone.
Good
Can you
evening.
hear me, please? Yeah, all right, thank you. Please, shortly before we assigned a breakout section of groups, actually lost connection. So I don't know what led to the discussion that actually brought up for us to discuss the CBN government and the rule of law. And please give us a brief background so that we can discuss around it. Thank you.
You're saying you don't know the issues concerning the CBN governor? If I get you one. Hello, are the participants still here? This is group 3, right?
Hello. Is anyone again? I learned we have 8 minutes earlier, and I think for my time we have just about 4 minutes left.
Mr. Oseni, can you please add me as a co-host? I think I went out briefly and they handed you the hosting rights. Can you put me as a host? Can you hear me? Because without that, I won't be able to manage the breakout sessions. Oh, one here has gone. And he has left. So who's going to? This group is not discussing anything. Oh, Mr. Sulaudin.
Yes, ma. I have. Yes, ma. I just spoke earlier.
Yeah, I
I
know
spoke.
you try to get others to talk. You said you don't know the issues concerning the CBN governor.
Sorry, the connection is bad here.
I'm trying to get the hosting rights back so that I can manage these breakout sessions.
Before we discuss, we said something on the group earlier that
I don't know who is in charge of, who is the host now. I don't know. Let me try and get in touch with the others. I'll get back to you. Musa Salaudin, apologies, but I'm trying to sort out this issue. So I have to go off with it. Thank you.
all right, it's all right, no problem. Thank you very, very much. Bimbola Grillo and Briska Solomon, please, can we discuss around this topic we have been given?
Okay, thank you, Salahuddin. Can you hear me?
Yes,
Hello?
yes, I can hear you.
Okay, I think the question has to do with the way and manner.
Hello, we can't hear you anymore. Hello, we can't hear you anymore, Mr. Solomon. Oh, we lost him. Mrs. Abimbola Grillo, you have something to say, please, around this? And let's get to understand the question. Is it when we're talking about the CBN governor, is this the former CBN governor or the current CBN governor?
Hello?
Oh, you're welcome back, Mr. Solomon.
Yeah, thank you. Sorry, the network is a bit not stable here. So, in my opinion, I think the challenges in handling the case of former CBN governor uh, has to do with one, political interference, because the case is political, and whenever there is political interest in a matter, then the issue of rule of law is zero. So this is one of the challenges. And I think another one could be lack of transparency in the whole proceedings. Even the public are not really aware of what actually has the former civilian governor done. So the public perception is that government is on a selective justice, because to them there are other people that have committed similar or even more grievous offenses than the CBN. So the public perception is that there is a bias. So I think these are some of, in my opinion, these are some of the challenges in handling the case. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Brisker. Yes, if I should get you clearly, you mentioned the issue of political interest.
Yes,
You mentioned uh, uh,
lack of
uh,
transparency
lack of transparency and selective justice.
and selective justice.
Okay, so and talking about like you mentioned that the government, there are people that have done something that is offenses that are greater than that of the CBN governor.
Yes, that's a public opinion. The public feels that
Okay,
there are other people that have done something more grievous than this, and nothing was
and they were
done.
okay. I think that should also be uh that is also related in my own view to
Yes,
selective justice too.
yes, exactly.
Uh, yes, these are two fundamental points.
Yes.
Okay, yes. So uh, is there any other contribution from other members? Dr. Jibril Lawal. Dr. Jibril Lawal, any contribution? Okay. Well, is there anyone speaking?
Hello, can any of you get through to Kayode Oseni? Please tell him to make Mentor Bolale host again. For some reason, he's the host now, and he's not answering. He's not answering the call.
Let's 2 o'clock. Me out.
Wow. Our breakout sessions should be rounding up by now. I don't know. Mentor Albert, what can we do?
I don't know how
Should
this
we all
happened.
go out and come in again?
Yeah, that's the only thing we can do. And right, so you go out of this one, and then you maybe what we'll do is we'll call the group on WhatsApp to round up.
Okay.
Or okay,
We
you
still
go out and
have
come in again. I'll try and see if I can get through to the other groups and see if they can go out and come in. I'm putting a message on our WhatsApp group to ask
our
everybody
main
to go out
WhatsApp.
and come back again.
We're almost done, just 2 more slides anyway. So
Okay, yeah. I'm putting a message on our WhatsApp group to ask everyone to go out and come out again because I can't even
okay.
get into the other groups now.
Okay. All right. So can we all leave and then come in again, please? Hello. Oh, we're here. The others have not been able to come in. We have to round up. Okay. We have to round up. Who is the host for today?
Guru, ai ba kuma ba za a iya faɗa min ba. Aka ga na shigo gidan nan na fita.
Who is
Shiga
the
na
host
magana da na shigo
now?
gida na fita kuma ba za a iya ce min.
Okay, everybody's joining back in. I don't know who is our host now because I've been knocked out of host privileges. Hello, everybody. Welcome back.
Thank you, Ma. We are well. Thank you for welcoming us back.
We just have
It
a few
seems
more
that we
minutes.
don't have a host now. I
I'm
don't know.
wondering. I don't
Nobody
know.
is a host. Yeah.
Nobody's hosting, and I can't share the last screen. Okay. We'll just we've taken longer than ever before the breakout session. But like I said, the idea is just to look at some very popular cases that have come up. And under this issue of accountability and different forms of accountability and the use of law. I know we've discussed at some level at the breakout session, but key issues I just wanted to bring out for the removal of the Chief Justice of Nigeria. I think what we'll do is that on the platform, on the WhatsApp platform, we can bring out the key issues for each group there, and then we can discuss it after the meeting. But for the removal of the CJN, it's basically looking at how the independence of the judiciary and how it affects their role in enforcing the rule of law. Those are the kind of issues that I wanted you to bring out from from that case study. And clamping down on corrupt judges. Maybe I should have put corrupt in quotes to show whether even those that are supposed to be accounting, that are supposed to uphold the rule of law and the issues of accountability, they themselves are subject to the corruption we're talking about. So those are the kind of issues and challenges I was hoping you bring up there. For group 2, police brutality, of course, this is where we're basically talking about accountability. What kind of accountability was demanded by this particular NSAS movement? The vertical accountability, horizontal accountability, or diagonal accountability, and what moves were made. And then did it give the results that people wanted? How was government's reaction? Those are kind of things I was hoping you bring out in that aspect. For the case of former Central Bank of Nigerian government, we're looking at institutional accountability, checks and balances from one institution to another, whether there was abuse of power, corruption, and things that the former governor was accused of, and then keeping him in police custody and not granting him bail for the offenses they have alleged he has committed. Are those things part of the rule of law? Him being a former CBN governor, and we always say that the rule of law does not protect anybody. Everybody must be subject to the rule of law. So those are the kind of issues I was hoping your discussions would cover, and then we could have brought up your presentations, but I think we have outdone ourselves today. So I would okay, Mr. Kayode is back. Mr. Kayode Oseni, we were looking for you. Oh. Have you been able to give me have you been able to make me a co-host quickly? Mr. Kayode Oseni. If not, I will continue. So those are the things I was saying I was hoping you would discuss at your breakout session, and we can just table those issues on the major group platform. So we have only 2 more slides. So the next slide I had in my presentation was, how can we protect the rule of law? And I have some recommendations here. Legal literacy and civic education. what we're doing as Solag is very, very important. And we need to do more, and as often as possible to remind ourselves what we need to understand as citizens of the country and what our rights and duties are, and how we can participate effectively to ensure that we contribute to the development of the country. Do not leave it for only a few leaders in quotes, but citizens are also very, very important in ensuring that we sustain our democracy and ensure there is development for the country. So legal literacy and civic education is one way we can protect the rule of law. If we don't know what the rule of law is, how can we protect it? So these are the things that we have been doing today. Then the role of the civil society and the media is very, very critical. Sometimes you cannot do it alone as a single individual. Look for organizations that share the same principles, the same ideology as you do, and join the civil society. If you cannot join them as members of the organization, support such civil society organizations that fight for the adherence of the rule of law and keep people, all these leaders accountable. Same thing with media. We must know that the role of civil society and media is very important in protecting rule of law. Then there was an aspect I wanted us to discuss, but we have run out of time. Digital accountability tools. These are things like budgets, tracker. The beauty about digital age and all these young people now is that we have so many things that can track actions and decisions of government. So budget of the federal government, budget of the individual state governments, they're all online. And you can see what is going on. So we need to ensure that we have all these tools available at the tip of our fingertips so that we can be informed about what we're doing. Then reporting mechanism. We need to develop systems within the society where we can report issues where people are not doing well. And then, of course, whistleblower was one issue I wanted us to discuss, but unfortunately, we have run out of time. But whistleblower protection is also critical in protecting the rule of law. And then, how can we promote accountability? Please, one, get informed, know your rights. We have the Freedom of Information Act. Know what it stands for. Luckily, the Supreme Court has held that it applies to all the states, not just the federal government. So know what these are, know how to ask questions, write letters, asking that we adhere to the Freedom of Information Act. I talked about familiarizing with the digital tools and technology. It's very important. The whistleblowing policies, also very important. We must encourage reporting, community-based reporting, know who to report to, develop a community and have structures where they can take action when issues are reported to them by citizens. If you're a lawyer, provide legal aids for victims where their rights have been infringed upon, or they feel that there's been abuse of power that has affected individuals. Provide legal aid services if you're a lawyer. If you're not a lawyer, support civil society organizations and other people or organizations that provide legal services for victims. Then organize or take part in protests and rallies. I know that after the answer, people are like, but we mustn't stop if we want government to do the right thing, our leaders to do the right thing. We must protect our rule of law and we must protect our country. We need to take part. And of course, the last one is vote during elections. We must vote during elections. So, and of course, when I mean vote during elections, don't let anybody buy your votes. Oh, I've been returned as the host. So So, in conclusion, we know what rule of law is. That is where everybody is subject to the law of the land. Accountability is about taking responsibility, owning up to your mistakes, and facing the consequences of your actions. We have legal frameworks and structures that support rule of law accountability. We have the types of accountability and the institutions that help us in protecting the rule of law. And of course, as citizens of the country, we must come together. You can do it individually if you want, but it's always better to have collective actions. We must all promote the rule of law and accountability in our country, starting from our individual communities. So thank you so much, everyone, for being part of this discussion. I will come in 1 minute. Okay, and we have gone through our entire course. And I have put up some tasks for you. So Mentor Albert will help us transfer these questions to our platforms so that you can answer the questions on the platform. And I also put some references there. And I say thank you so much for participating in today's should I say lecture or presentation? I appreciate each and every one of you. I have to say apologies for the hitch in the, we had some technical difficulties in terms of the breakout rooms, but I hope we've been able to discuss the issues that I mentioned. And please don't forget, breakout participants should put their issues, challenges, and recommendations on the platform. With that, I say thank you, and I am done for today. I hand over to Mentor Albert. Mentor Albert, are you here? I don't think he's around. Okay. Are there any questions briefly? If you have any questions, please let me know. But like I said, there's we've run out of time. If you have any questions, can you put them on the platform so that I can respond to them, if that is okay by you, so that we can all, sorry. Oh, this is the wrong screen. Or apologies for that. Okay. So please put your questions on the platform and I will respond to them as soon as we can. Any other questions before we close for the day, please? Okay, in the absence of any other questions, can we close for today? At least you people should identify whether you can hear me.
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, good. I know it's been a long day. So, do I have some? Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you
All
for
right.
your time.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night, Mom.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Mom.
All right. So.